The night Sera Nolan whispered the name Vasilis in her sleep. She had no idea she was calling to a king who had ruled the undead for 3 centuries, and she certainly didn't know he would hear her from 100 miles away and come for her before dawn broke. She woke to moonlight streaming through her apartment window, her heart racing from a dream she couldn't quite remember. Only fragments remained, white hair like spun silver, eyes the color of frozen lakes, and a voice that spoke her name as though it were sacred. The clock on her nightstand read 3 in the morning. Sera pressed her palms against her face, trying to shake off the lingering sensation of being watched, of being wanted with an intensity that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. What she didn't know was that in that exact moment, Vasilis had risen from his throne in the court of eternal night, his entire body going rigid as her voice reached him across the distance. The ancient vampire's eyes had widened, something that hadn't happened in decades. His council members fell silent, watching their king with a mixture of fear and fascination. "She called to me," Vasilis said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. He was already moving toward the grand doors of the throne room, his white hair flowing behind him like a banner. His skin was pale as marble, luminous in the candlelight, and his movements held the grace of a predator who had never known defeat. "Your Majesty." "Who?" asked Elian, his second in command, a vampire who had stood beside him for 200 years. "I don't know her name yet," Vasilis replied, his lips curving into something between a smile and a revelation. "But she knows mine. She whispered it in her sleep, and I felt it like a summons I cannot ignore." Elian's expression grew concerned. "That shouldn't be possible. No human should be able to reach you across such distance unless she's meant for me," Vasilis finished. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. In all his years, no human had ever called to him this way. The old blood laws spoke of such connections, but they were considered myth, stories told to young vampires about the rare mortals who could become true companions to their kind. Not merely food, not simply entertainment, but equals in every way that mattered. He was already descending the stone steps of his fortress, the sprawling castle that existed in a pocket realm beneath the modern city of Chicago. His kind had learned long ago to hide in plain sight, to build their courts in the spaces between the human world and their own ancient domain. "Prepare my car," he commanded. "I'm going to the surface." Sera tried to go back to sleep, but the dream clung to her like a second skin. She finally gave up at 4 in the morning and made herself tea in her tiny kitchen, staring out at the Chicago skyline. She'd moved here 6 months ago for a fresh start after her life in Boston had fallen apart. A bad relationship, a worse job, and a family that didn't understand her had all driven her to the city where she knew no one. The loneliness was crushing sometimes, but at least it was honest. At least here, she could be herself without pretending to fit into boxes that were never meant for her. She worked as a researcher at the Harold Washington Library, spending her days among old books and forgotten histories. It was quiet work, solitary work, and it suited her. But lately, she'd been having these dreams. Always the same figure. A man who wasn't quite a man, with eyes that saw through her and a presence that made her feel less alone than she'd ever felt while awake. Tonight had been different, though. Tonight, she'd spoken to him. She'd said his name. Vasilis. Where had that name even come from? It sounded ancient, Greek perhaps, and utterly unfamiliar. Yet it had fallen from her lips with the certainty of a prayer she'd known her entire life. Her phone buzzed, a text from her coworker, Miranda. "You up?" "Can't sleep either. This city has weird energy tonight." Sera typed back. "Felt it too. Must be the full moon or something." But it wasn't the full moon, she checked. 3 days past full, in fact. She showered, trying to wash away the strange tension that had settled into her bones. The water was scalding, but she barely felt it. Her mind kept returning to the dream, to the way those ice-blue eyes had looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for centuries. By 5:30, she was dressed and pacing her apartment. She had to be at work by 9, but there was no point in trying to rest now. She grabbed her coat and decided to walk to the 24-hour diner 3 blocks away. Coffee and strangers seemed better than her own spiraling thoughts. The October air was sharp with the promise of winter. Chicago's streets were mostly empty at this hour, just a few early commuters and late-night workers heading home. Sera wrapped her scarf tighter and breathed in the smell of fallen leaves and distant rain. She didn't notice the sleek black car that had been circling her block for the past 20 minutes. Didn't see the figure inside, watching her building with an intensity that would have frightened her if she'd known. Vasilis sat in the back of the luxury sedan, his driver waiting patiently for orders. The Vampire King had tracked her scent from the moment he'd entered the city limits. It was intoxicating, vanilla and old paper, ink and something uniquely her that made his dead heart remember what yearning felt like. When she emerged from the building, he went absolutely still. Even through the tinted windows, he could see her clearly with his supernatural vision. Brown hair that caught the streetlight like copper, average height with a frame that spoke of someone who forgot to take care of herself too often, wearing clothes that prioritized comfort over fashion. She looked tired, human, and utterly ordinary. And yet everything in him recognized her. "Follow her," he told his driver, Theo, a vampire who had served him for 50 years. "Keep distance. I don't want to frighten her." "My lord, shouldn't we simply approach?" "You are a king. She's fragile," Vasilis said softly. "She's fragile and mortal and has no idea what she is to me." We approach carefully. He watched as she entered a small diner, settling into a booth near the window. The urge to go to her immediately was nearly overwhelming, but he had lived 3 centuries by learning patience. He needed to understand what was happening first, needed to know why this particular human had the ability to call him across distances, why her voice in sleep had reached him like a beacon. There were protocols for this. The old laws spoke of blood resonance, the rare occurrence when a human soul harmonized with a vampire's essence so perfectly that they became bound across space and time. It happened perhaps once every 1,000 years, and when it did, the vampire in question had no choice but to answer the call. But it was more than compulsion. It was recognition. It was destiny, if one believed in such things. Vasilis had never believed in destiny. Until tonight. Inside the diner, Sera ordered coffee and scrambled eggs she probably wouldn't eat. The waitress, a tired woman named Barb who'd been working this shift for 20 years, gave her a sympathetic look. "Man trouble?" Barb asked. Sera laughed weakly. "I wish it was that simple." "It's never that simple, honey, but coffee helps." Barb patted her shoulder and moved to the next table. Sera pulled out her phone and, against her better judgment, searched for the name Vasilis. The results were mostly Greek restaurants and a few historical figures, nothing that explained why the name felt like it had been carved into her bones. She expanded her search. Vasilis plus Chicago, nothing relevant. Vasilis plus vampire. She froze. The search had been a joke, really. Just her mind making connections from too many late-night novels and her strange dreams. But the results that came up made her blood run cold. There were forum posts, conspiracy theory websites, and old urban legend sites that all mentioned the same thing. The Vampire King of the Midwest, an ancient creature named Vasilis who supposedly ruled the undead from beneath Chicago. It was ridiculous, completely absurd. Sera didn't believe in vampires. But she'd whispered that exact name in her sleep, and now here were stories about a vampire king with that exact name in her exact city. Her hands were shaking. She put down her phone and tried to focus on her breathing. This was coincidence, had to be. She'd probably heard the name somewhere, her subconscious had filed it away, and now it was emerging in dreams. That was how brains worked. There was a logical explanation. The bell above the diner door chimed. Sera looked up reflexively, and her entire world stopped. He stood in the doorway like something out of a painting from the Renaissance, impossibly beautiful and utterly inhuman. White hair fell to his shoulders, so pale it seemed to glow in the fluorescent lighting. His skin was alabaster, flawless and luminous, and when his eyes met hers, she saw that they were exactly the color she'd dreamed, ice blue, ancient, and fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. He was tall, over 6 feet, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Everything about him screamed wealth, power, and danger. And he was walking directly toward her table. Sera's flight instinct kicked in, but her body wouldn't obey. She sat frozen as he approached, as he stopped beside her booth, as he spoke her name in a voice like dark velvet. Sera Nolan. It wasn't a question. He knew her name. "How?" she started, but couldn't finish. "May I sit?" he asked, his accent difficult to place. Greek perhaps, but layered with other influences, the speech pattern of someone who had lived through countless eras. She should say no. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she nodded. He slid into the booth across from her with inhuman grace, and up close, he was even more overwhelming. Beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, like staring at the sun. His eyes never left her face, studying her with a mixture of wonder and something that looked almost like relief. "You called to me," Vasilis said simply. "I heard you whisper my name from 100 miles away. I had to come." Sera's mouth went dry. "That's not possible. And yet, here I am." A slight curve of his lips, not quite a smile. "You dreamed of me, didn't you? You've been dreaming of me for weeks." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been dreaming of you as well." He leaned forward slightly, and she caught his scent, winter air, and something dark and compelling, like old libraries and frozen forests. "I am Vasilis Drakos, and whether you believe it or not, I am what your research just suggested. I am the vampire king of this territory, and you, Sera, have somehow called to me in a way that should be impossible." She should laugh, should tell him he was insane and leave, but everything in her recognized the truth in his words, the dreams, the pull she'd felt, the name that had come from nowhere. It all made a terrible, impossible sense. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "It is. But it's also happening, and I need to understand why." His expression softened slightly, and she saw something vulnerable beneath the regal bearing. "I have lived for 312 years, Sera. In all that time, I have never felt what I felt when you whispered my name tonight. It was like coming home after an eternity of wandering. It was like finding something I didn't know I'd lost." Tears prickled at her eyes, and she didn't even understand why. "I don't know you." "Not yet," he said gently. "But your soul knows mine, and mine knows yours. That's what blood resonance is. It's the rarest of connections between a vampire and a human. It means we're meant to be together, in whatever form that takes. I don't believe in destiny. Neither did I, until 3 hours ago." He reached across the table slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he laid his hand over hers, and the touch sent electricity racing through her entire body. His skin was cool, but not cold, smooth like marble. "I'm not here to frighten you or force anything. I simply needed to find you, to see if what I felt was real. Now that I have, I can wait. I can give you time to understand, to choose." "Choose what?" Sera asked, her voice barely audible. "Whether to explore this connection or walk away from it. I won't compel you, won't manipulate you. Your free will is sacred to me." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gentle gesture that felt more intimate than it should. "But I hope you'll give me a chance to know you, and to let you know me. I think we both deserve to understand what this is." Barb appeared with Sera's food, took one look at Vasilis, and nearly dropped the plate. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company. Can I get you anything, sir?" "No, thank you," Vasilis said smoothly, turning his devastating gaze on the waitress. "But I appreciate your service." Barb blushed, actually blushed, and hurried away. Sera would have found it funny if she wasn't currently holding hands with a vampire king who claimed they were destined for each other. "I don't know what to do with this," Sera admitted. "I came to Chicago to escape drama and find some peace. This is the opposite of peace." "I understand." Vasilis withdrew his hand, though she could see the reluctance in the gesture. "What would make you comfortable? What would help you feel safe while you process this?" The fact that he was asking, that he was giving her control in a situation where she felt utterly powerless, meant more than she could express. "I need time. I need to think." "Then you shall have it." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a card, placing it on the table. "My private number. Call me when you're ready to talk, or if you need anything at all. Day or night, I will answer." "Don't vampires sleep during the day?" she asked, and the question came out almost teasing, which surprised them both. His lips curved into a genuine smile, and it transformed his face from beautiful to absolutely breathtaking. "We can be active during the day if necessary, though it's uncomfortable. Sunlight is our enemy, but we're not quite as limited as the stories suggest. We've learned to adapt over the centuries." "How does that work?" The sunlight thing? It burns us, weakens us significantly. Direct sunlight for more than a few minutes would be fatal, but shade, protective clothing, strong sunscreen, these help. We're not dust the moment dawn breaks, but we are drastically reduced in power. He tilted his head, studying her. You're curious about my nature. That's good. Ask me anything you wish. Why me? Sera asked, the question that had been burning in her chest since he sat down. I'm nobody special. I'm just a library researcher who lives alone and has no family to speak of. Why would I have this connection with someone like you? Vasilis' expression grew serious. Blood resonance doesn't care about social status or accomplishments. It's about souls that complement each other, about essences that harmonize. You may not see yourself as special, Sera, but I assure you, you are. I felt it the moment you called to me. You're brave, you're intelligent, and there's a strength in you that you don't even recognize yet. He stood, towering over the booth. Think about everything I've said. Research if you need to, and when you're ready, call me. I'll be waiting. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Now that the connection has been established, now that we've met in person, it will grow stronger. You may find the dreams intensify. You may feel my presence even when I'm not near. Don't be afraid of it. I'll feel you too, and I promise you, I will never use that connection to harm you. Then he was gone, moving through the diner and out into the pre-dawn darkness with a speed that proved he was exactly what he claimed to be. Sera sat in the booth for a long time, staring at the business card. It was heavy paper, expensive, with just a name and a phone number embossed in silver. No title, no company. Just Vasilis Drakos. Her eggs grew cold. Barb refilled her coffee 3 times, and slowly the sun began to rise over Chicago, bringing with it a day that Sera knew would change everything. She called in sick to work. There was no way she could focus on catalog systems and historical documents when her entire understanding of reality had just been shattered. Instead, she went home, locked her door, and did what she always did when confronted with the impossible. She researched. The internet was full of vampire lore, most of it contradictory and clearly fictional. But buried in the conspiracy forums and occult websites, she found threads that felt different. Discussions about real encounters, about vampire courts that existed in hidden spaces beneath major cities, about blood laws and ancient protocols. One forum post in particular caught her attention. It was from 5 years ago, posted by someone with the username Midnight Scholar. Vampires are real, and they're nothing like the movies. They're not monsters, not really. They're predators, yes, but they're also bound by codes of honor that put most human laws to shame. The old ones, the ones who've survived for centuries, they value loyalty and truth above all else. And if you're ever lucky or unlucky enough to encounter a vampire who claims blood resonance with you, know this. You've just become the most important thing in that vampire's existence. They will protect you, cherish you, and never let you go if you choose to stay with them. Sera read the post 3 times, her heart pounding. The description matched everything Vasilis had told her. But could she trust it? Could she trust any of this? Her phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. She answered hesitantly. Hello? Sera Nolan? A woman's voice, cultured and calm. Yes? My name is Lilith. I'm calling on behalf of King Vasilis. He wanted me to reach out and offer you resources if you're interested. Information about our kind, about what blood resonance means, about what you can expect if you choose to pursue this connection. He sent you to convince me, Sera said, immediately suspicious. Actually, he forbade me from trying to influence your decision. I'm simply here to provide facts if you want them. No pressure, no manipulation. Those are his direct orders. Lilith paused. For what it's worth, I've served the king for 90 years, and I've never seen him like this. Whatever you two have, it's genuine. Sera closed her eyes. What would happen if I said no? If I just walked away from all of this? Then you walk away. The king would respect your choice, though. I imagine it would cause you both considerable pain. Blood resonance, once awakened, doesn't simply disappear. You'd likely feel an ache, a sense of incompleteness for the rest of your life. But you would be free to live that life however you choose. And if I said yes? Then you'd begin the process of truly knowing each other, The king would court you properly, introduce you to our world gradually. If the connection deepened and you both wished it, you could eventually be turned, become one of us. But that would be your choice, made freely and fully informed. No vampire can turn a human without consent, and the king would never violate that law. The idea of becoming a vampire should have horrified her. Instead, Sera felt a curious flutter of possibility. I need time. Of course. I'll send you some reading material, if that's all right. Historical texts, our laws, testimonies from other humans who've joined our world. No rush, no expectations, just information. Okay, Sera said. Thank you. One more thing, Lilith added. Be careful over the next few days. The fact that you formed blood resonance with our king will not go unnoticed in our world. There are vampires who would see you as a vulnerability, a way to hurt or manipulate him. The king has already assigned protection to watch over you, but stay aware of your surroundings. Fear spiked through her. I'm in danger? You're protected, Lilith corrected. There's a difference, but yes, you should know the reality of the situation. Being connected to vampire royalty comes with certain risks. After they hung up, Sera noticed what she hadn't before, a figure standing in the shadows across from her building. Even from 4 floors up, she could tell they weren't human. The stillness was too perfect, the posture too alert. Her protection, she assumed, the thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt safer than she had in months. True to Lilith's word, an email arrived an hour later with attachments, PDFs of vampire history, legal codes, and personal accounts. Sera spent the entire day reading, absorbing information about a world that existed parallel to her own. Vampires, she learned, were created through the exchange of blood and the death of the human body followed by resurrection. The process was excruciating and permanent. Once turned, a vampire needed blood to survive, though they could subsist on animal blood if necessary. Human blood was stronger, more sustaining, but ethical vampires like those in Vasilis' court only took from willing donors or used blood banks. They lived in courts organized by territory, each ruled by a king or queen who had proven their strength and wisdom. Vasilis had held Chicago and the surrounding Midwest for over 200 years, having claimed the territory after defeating the previous ruler in sanctioned combat. The blood laws were complex but made sense. No turning children, no creating vampires without consent, no killing except in self-defense or sanctioned duels, no exposing their existence to the broader human world. Violations were punished severely, often with execution. And then there was blood resonance. The texts described it as a soul-deep connection that transcended the normal boundaries between human and vampire. It was rare, precious, and once established, nearly impossible to ignore. Both parties would feel drawn to each other, would sense each other's emotions, would dream of each other. It was the foundation for the strongest partnerships in vampire society, bonds that could last for centuries. The accounts from humans who had experienced it described overwhelming feelings of recognition, of coming home, of finding a missing piece of themselves. They also spoke of fear, of the difficulty of leaving behind human life, of the adjustment to a new existence. But almost universally, they said they didn't regret their choice. Sera set down her phone as darkness fell again. 24 hours ago, she'd been a lonely librarian with strange dreams. Now she was apparently the destined mate of a vampire king with supernatural protection and an impossible decision to make. She looked at the business card still sitting on her desk. Her fingers itched to dial the number. Instead, she decided to sleep on it. She needed to be certain, needed to make this choice with a clear head rather than caught up in the intensity of the moment. But that night, the dreams came back stronger than ever. She stood in a throne room carved from black stone, lit by thousands of candles. Vasilis sat on a throne of obsidian, wearing robes that spoke of ancient ceremony, and when he saw her, he stood and descended the steps with his hand extended. "You came back to me," he said, and the relief in his voice made her chest ache. "I'm not really here," she replied. "This is a dream." "Is it?" He took her hand, and the touch felt absolutely real. "Or is it something more? Our connection allows us to meet like this, in the space between waking and sleeping. This is as real as you allow it to be." The throne room faded, replaced by a garden under starlight. Roses bloomed in impossible colors, and a fountain played music that sounded like heartbeats. "This is beautiful," Sera whispered. "This is my sanctuary," Vasilis said, walking beside her down a path of white stones. "I come here when I need to remember beauty, when the weight of ruling grows too heavy. I've never shared it with anyone before you." "Why me?" she asked again, because she needed to understand. He stopped, turning to face her fully. In the starlight, he looked like something from a myth, too perfect to be real. "Because when I look at you, I see everything I thought I'd lost when I became this. You make me remember what it means to hope, to yearn, to want more than just existence. You make me feel alive, Sera, and I haven't felt that in 300 years. She reached up, touching his face, and was startled to find it warm in this dream space. "I'm afraid." "I know. So am I." His hand covered hers, holding it against his cheek. "I'm terrified that you'll choose to walk away, and I'm terrified that you'll choose to stay and I'll somehow fail to be worthy of that gift. But fear is honest, at least. Fear means this matters." "It does matter," Sera admitted. "I don't know why or how, but you matter to me already. That's what scares me most." Vasilis pulled her closer, until they were standing in an embrace that felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Then be scared with me. Let us figure this out together. I promise you, Sera, whatever you need, whatever pace you require, I will match it. I've waited 3 centuries for you. I can wait as long as you need." She woke with tears on her face and the scent of impossible roses still in her nose. The dream had felt more real than her waking life, and she knew, deep in her bones, that she'd actually been with him in some way she didn't fully understand yet. Her phone showed 7 in the morning. She picked up the business card and dialed before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the first ring. "Sera." Just her name, but it carried such weight of emotion. "I want to see you again," she said. "In person, in the real world. I want to talk more." "When?" No hesitation, no games. "Tonight? After sunset?" "I'll pick you up at 8. Dress comfortably. I want to show you something." "Okay." "Sera?" His voice softened. "Thank you for giving this a chance, for giving me a chance. I dreamed about you again last night. The garden." A pause. "I know. I was there. I felt you with me. How is that possible? I'll explain everything tonight. I promise." They said goodbye, and Sera sat on her bed staring at her phone and trying to process what she'd just agreed to. A date with a vampire king. A vampire king who she'd somehow dream-walked with the night before. Her life had officially become stranger than any book she'd ever cataloged. She went to work, after all, needing the normalcy even if she couldn't focus. Miranda noticed immediately. "Okay, spill," her coworker demanded during lunch. "You look completely different. Did you meet someone?" Sera hesitated. "Maybe. It's complicated. The good kind of complicated or the restraining order kind? I'm not sure yet," Sera admitted, which was honest at least. "But I'm seeing him again tonight." "Details. What's his name? What does he do?" She couldn't exactly say Vampire King, so she settled for, "His name is Vasilis. He's in private security." That was technically true. He did protect his territory. Miranda's eyes lit up. "Ooh, mysterious. Is he hot?" "Unfairly so." "Then wear the blue sweater tonight. It makes your eyes pop, and text me when you get home so I know you're safe." The concern warmed her. "I will. Promise." The day crawled by. Sera found herself watching the clock, anticipation building with each passing hour. She left work early, went home, and actually put effort into her appearance for the first time in months. The blue sweater Miranda had mentioned, her best jeans, minimal makeup, and her hair left down instead of in its usual messy bun. At exactly 8 p.m., her intercom buzzed. "Miss Nolan, your car is here." Sera's stomach flipped. She grabbed her jacket and headed downstairs, where the same sleek black sedan from the night before waited. But this time, Vasilis stood beside it. He wore dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made his white hair look even more striking. When he saw her, his entire face transformed with a smile that made her forget to breathe. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You look like you stepped out of a painting." "I'll take that as a compliment." He opened the car door for her. "Shall we?" Inside the car, she was hyper-aware of him beside her, the small space making his presence even more overwhelming. He kept a respectful distance, but she could feel the pull between them, like gravity trying to close the gap. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My home," Vasilis said. "I want you to see my world, understand what my life is like. If that makes you uncomfortable, we can go somewhere else." "No, I want to see it." They drove through Chicago's streets, eventually pulling up to what looked like an abandoned warehouse in an industrial district. Sera raised an eyebrow. Vasilis chuckled. "Appearances can be deceiving. Come." He led her inside, past the facade of decay, to an elevator hidden behind a false wall. It descended for what felt like minutes, going deep beneath the city. When the doors opened, Sera's breath caught. They stood in a grand hall that belonged to another era entirely. Vaulted ceilings carved with intricate patterns, walls of dark stone lit by chandeliers that cast warm light over everything. Tapestries that were clearly centuries old hung between modern art pieces, creating a blend of ancient and contemporary that somehow worked perfectly. "This is the court of eternal night," Vasilis said, watching her reaction. "My home for the past 200 years. Vampires moved through the space, all of them impossibly beautiful with their pale skin and graceful movements. They bowed respectfully as Vasilis passed, their eyes curious as they noted Sera beside him. He led her through the hall to a quieter wing, eventually opening a door to what was clearly his private quarters. The room was huge, decorated in dark woods and deep blues, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves covering 2 walls and large windows that showed something that wasn't the underground garage they should have been beneath. "Those overlook my personal realm," Vasilis explained, following her gaze. "A pocket dimension that exists outside normal space. One of the privileges of being king, I can create and maintain small worlds." Sera approached the window, looking out at an impossible landscape of starlit gardens and dark forests. "The garden from the dream." "Yes, I thought you might like to see it in waking." She turned to face him. "Tell me everything. I need to understand how this works, what this connection really means." Vasilis gestured to a comfortable seating area, and they settled into chairs facing each other. For the next 2 hours, he explained everything with remarkable patience. How blood resonance created a psychic link that allowed them to sense each other's emotions and even meet in dreams. How it marked her as his in the eyes of vampire society, which both protected her and potentially made her a target. How it would only grow stronger the more time they spent together, until they could communicate mentally and sense each other across any distance. "If I choose not to pursue this," Sera asked, "would the connection fade?" "Eventually, perhaps, over years or decades. But it would always be there, a phantom ache of what could have been." His expression was carefully neutral. "I won't lie to you, Sera. I hope desperately that you'll choose to explore this with me. But I also need you to understand that I want you to choose freely. A connection forced or coerced would be worthless to me. I want you willing, aware, and whole." "What would it mean? If I chose yes?" "It would mean we would court each other properly. I would introduce you to my world gradually, let you meet my people and understand our ways. We would spend time together, learn each other, see if the connection between our souls translates to genuine compatibility in daily life." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "If things progressed, if we both wanted it, you could eventually choose to be turned and join me in immortality. But that would be far down the road, after you were completely certain. I've watched too many humans turn too quickly before they understood the weight of eternity. I won't make that mistake with you. And if I chose to stay human, then you would live your natural life, and I would cherish every moment we had together." Pain flickered across his face. "It would break something in me to watch you age and die while I remained unchanged, but I would accept it if that was your choice." Sera sat back, processing. Everything he said showed respect for her autonomy, patience with her fears, and a depth of feeling that was almost overwhelming. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Anything. Have you ever loved anyone before? In 300 years?" Vasilis was quiet for a long moment. "I've cared for people. I've had lovers, companions, friends who mattered deeply to me. But love?" He shook his head. "I thought I understood love when I was human. I had a wife, briefly, before I was turned. But that was a marriage arranged by our families, affection born of duty rather than passion. After I became this, I told myself that vampires didn't love the way humans do, that we were too removed from such emotions. And now? His eyes met hers, and the vulnerability there took her breath. Now I think I was lying to myself. I think I was protecting myself from feeling too much, from risking the kind of connection that could actually hurt if it was lost. But then you whispered my name, and every wall I'd built over 3 centuries crumbled to dust. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back, and took her hand. I don't know if this is love yet, Sera. It's too new, too raw. But I know it's the beginning of something that could be love, if we nurture it, and that terrifies and exhilarates me in equal measure. Sera squeezed his hand, feeling the coolness of his skin and the strength in his fingers. I feel it too. This pull toward you. It's like you said, recognition, like I've been looking for you without knowing it. Then give us a chance, Vasilis said softly. Let me court you properly. Let us see where this connection leads when we're both fully present and choosing it. Okay, Sera whispered. Yes, let's see where this goes. The smile that spread across his face was radiant, transforming him from beautiful to absolutely divine. He stood, pulling her up with him, and suddenly they were standing very close, her hand still in his. May I embrace you? He asked, always asking permission, always giving her the choice. Yes. His arms came around her, and Sera felt herself melt into the embrace. He was cool but not cold, solid and strong, and she felt safer in his arms than she had anywhere in her entire life. She breathed in his scent, winter and libraries, and something uniquely him, and let herself believe, just for a moment, that this impossible thing might actually work. They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other while the impossible gardens sparkled beyond the windows, and the weight of 3 centuries of loneliness finally began to lift from the vampire king's shoulders. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of discovery and growing connection. Vasilis courted her with old-world elegance and modern thoughtfulness. He took her to the opera, to exclusive restaurants, to his private library where they spent hours reading side by side. He introduced her to members of his court gradually, each vampire treating her with a respect that made it clear they understood her importance to their king. Lilith became an unexpected friend, helping Sera navigate vampire etiquette and answering endless questions with good humor. Elian remained cautiously protective, clearly waiting to see if this human would prove worthy of his king's devotion. Sera learned about vampire politics, about the delicate balance Vasilis maintained between the old ways and necessary evolution. She saw him settle disputes with wisdom and fairness, watched him protect the vulnerable members of his court, and witnessed the genuine loyalty his people gave him, because he had earned it over centuries of just rule. She also learned about the threats. There were vampires who saw Vasilis' growing attachment to a human as weakness. Whispers reached them of a faction in the eastern territories who believed the old kings had grown too soft, too accommodating of human concerns. But through it all, Vasilis was patient with her. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, content to hold her hand, to embrace her, to spend time simply being together. The connection between them grew stronger each day until she could sense his emotions as a constant hum beneath her thoughts, and he could feel hers just as clearly. The dreams became a nightly meeting place. They would find each other in his garden realm, talking for hours about everything and nothing. In those spaces, Sera felt bold enough to ask the questions that scared her in waking life. "What if I'm not strong enough for this world?" she asked one night as they walked through paths lined with night-blooming flowers. "You're stronger than you know," Vasilis replied. "I've seen you face the revelation of vampire's existence with remarkable calm. I've watched you hold your own in political discussions with court members who are centuries older than you. You adapt, you learn, you refuse to be diminished. That's not weakness, Sera. That's incredible strength." "I'm afraid of losing myself," she admitted, "of being swallowed up by your world and forgetting who I was." He stopped, turning to face her fully. "Then we'll make sure that doesn't happen. Your humanity, your perspective, your essential self, these are precious. I don't want you to become something you're not. I want you beside me as you are, bringing your light into my darkness." And if I choose to be turned someday, would I still be me? The turning changes you physically and enhances certain aspects of your nature, but your core self remains. You would still be Sera, just with greater strength, longer life, and different needs. He cupped her face gently. But that choice is far in the future, if it comes at all. Don't rush toward it out of fear or pressure. Let us simply be together now, and let the future unfold as it will. In the waking world, their first kiss came on a rainy Tuesday night 3 weeks after they'd met. They'd been in his library, debating the merits of different historical periods, when Sera had made a particularly clever argument that made him laugh, really laugh, not just the polite chuckle he gave most things. She'd looked at him, at the joy on his face, and thought, I could spend eternity hearing that sound. The thought should have scared her. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Vasilis, she said softly, and he'd turned to her, the laughter fading into something more intense. Yes? I'd like you to kiss me, if you want to. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating despite the unchanging light. I've wanted nothing more since the moment I saw you in that diner, but I was waiting for you to be ready. I'm ready. He moved to her with deliberate slowness, giving her every chance to change her mind. When his lips finally met hers, it was soft, almost reverent, a kiss that spoke of patience and carefully restrained passion. She leaned into it, her hands coming up to tangle in his white hair, and felt his control waver slightly as he deepened the kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, him from want rather than need for air, his eyes had taken on a faint red glow that she'd learned meant his vampire nature was close to the surface. You undo me, he whispered against her lips. 3 centuries of control, and you undo me with a kiss. Good, she said, surprised by her own boldness. I like knowing I affect you as much as you affect me. From that night on, physical affection became a natural part of their relationship. He was always careful with her, always aware of his superior strength, but Sera could feel the want beneath his control, and it thrilled her to know this ancient, powerful being desired her so completely. But not everything was romantic dinners and stolen kisses. 4 weeks into their courtship, the threat that had been lurking in the background finally materialized. Sera was leaving work late, having stayed to finish cataloging a new acquisition. Her protection, a vampire named Marcus, who'd been assigned to her by Vasilis, walked her to the car as always. They were halfway to the parking garage when 4 figures materialized from the shadows, moving with the inhuman speed that marked them as vampires. Marcus immediately stepped in front of Sera. This human is under the protection of King Vasilis. Stand down. The lead vampire, a woman with black hair and cruel eyes, smiled. We know exactly who she is. That's why we're here. A message needs to be sent that the old kings cannot hide behind human pets while our kind grows weak. You declare war on the Chicago court then, Marcus said calmly, though Sera could feel his tension. We declare that it's time for new leadership, leaders who remember that we are predators, not politicians. Things happened very fast after that. The vampires attacked. Marcus fought with impressive skill, taking down 2 of them, but there were too many. Sera ran, her human speed pathetically slow compared to theirs, but she didn't make it far before a hand grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. The black-haired vampire yanked her back, fangs extending. Nothing personal, human. You're just a tool, Sera screamed, both out loud and mentally, her terror flooding through the bond she shared with Vasilis. The vampire's fangs were inches from her throat when suddenly she was gone, ripped away by a blur of white and fury. Vasilis appeared like an avenging angel, his eyes blazing red, his fangs fully extended, and his entire being radiating an ancient power that made the attacking vampires freeze in fear. You dare, he snarled, his voice carrying harmonics that were purely inhuman. You dare touch what is mine? He moved with a violence Sera had never seen from him, efficient and brutal. The black-haired vampire didn't even have time to scream before he'd torn out her throat. The others tried to run, but Vasilis was faster, stronger, 3 centuries of power unleashed with focused rage. It was over in seconds. 4 vampires lay dead or dying, and Vasilis stood among them, breathing hard despite not needing air, his white hair disheveled and his clothes splattered with blood that looked black in the dim garage lighting. Then he turned to Sera, and the rage immediately transformed to concern. He was in front of her in an instant, his hands gentle as they checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they bite you? Sera, talk to me." "I'm okay," she managed, though she was shaking violently. "You came. I called for you and you came." "Always," he said fiercely. "I will always come when you call. I felt your fear and I ran, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, despite the blood on his clothes, needing his solidity. Marcus approached, favoring his left side where he'd been injured. "My king, I failed. You fought 4 vampires and survived long enough for me to arrive." Vasilis cut him off. "You did not fail, but we need to determine how they knew Sera's schedule, how they penetrated our security." "There's a leak in the court," Marcus said grimly. "Has to be." Vasilis nodded, his arms still around Sera. "We'll root it out. But first I'm taking Sera somewhere safe." He lifted her easily, and normally she would have protested being carried like a child. But shock was setting in, and she couldn't seem to make her legs work properly. Vasilis brought her to his car, settled her in the back seat, and slid in beside her, pulling her against his side. "Take us home," he told Theo, "and summon the full council. We're going to war." Sera must have dozed during the drive, the adrenaline crash pulling her under. She woke in Vasilis's bed, a massive 4-poster affair with dark blue sheets that were softer than anything she'd ever felt. He sat beside her, cleaned of blood and changed into fresh clothes, watching her with worried eyes. "How long was I asleep?" she asked. "2 hours. I brought you here because it's the most protected place in my realm. No one can reach you here without going through me first." Sera sat up, memories of the attack flooding back. "You killed them." "Yes." No apology, no justification, just acknowledgement. "Have you killed many people over the years?" Vasilis considered the question seriously. "Yes. In duels, in defense of my territory, in protection of those under my care. I'm not a pacifist, Sera. I can't afford to be. But I don't kill indiscriminately, and I take no pleasure in it." He reached for her hand. "Does it frighten you, seeing what I'm capable of?" "It should," Sera admitted, "but mostly I'm just grateful you got there in time. If you hadn't," she shuddered. "Don't think about it. You're safe. I won't let anyone hurt you." His jaw clenched. "But we need to talk about what happens next. This attack wasn't random. It's part of a larger movement among certain vampire factions who believe I've grown too soft, too accommodating. They'll see you as my weakness, and they'll try again. What do? We have options. I can increase your protection significantly, essentially lock you down until we've eliminated the threat. Or," he hesitated, or I can turn you. Not for eternity, not yet, but there are temporary measures. I could give you some of my blood, create a partial bond that would grant you enhanced strength and speed, make you harder to kill. It would last a few weeks before needing to be renewed." Sera blinked. "That's possible?" "It's an old practice, rarely used anymore. It would change you temporarily, make you stronger and faster, though nowhere near vampire level. But it would also tie you more closely to me, make the blood resonance even more intense." He watched her carefully. "I won't do it without your complete consent." She thought about it, running through the implications. Enhanced strength meant she wouldn't be as helpless, but it also meant accepting vampire blood, accepting a deeper change. Would it hurt? No. You'd drink from me, and the changes would take a few hours to manifest. You'd feel different, stronger, your senses sharper, but you'd still be human, still yourself. "Then let's do it," Sera decided. "I don't want to be a helpless victim. I want to be able to fight beside you if necessary." Vasilis looked surprised and pleased. "You're certain?" "Yes." He stood, moving to a cabinet and withdrawing an ornate dagger. When he returned to the bed, he sat facing her and without hesitation drew the blade across his palm. Blood welled up, impossibly red against his pale skin. "Drink," he said, offering his hand. "Not too much, 3 or 4 swallows should be enough." Sera had a moment of squeamishness, but she pushed through it, bringing his hand to her mouth and sealing her lips over the cut. His blood was warm, almost hot, and tasted like copper and something darker, richer. She swallowed once, twice, 3 times, and felt it settle into her stomach like liquid fire. Vasilis pulled his hand back, the wound already healing. "That's enough. You'll start to feel it soon." He was right. Within minutes, Sera felt heat spreading through her body, her heart racing as the vampire blood integrated with her system. Her vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid. Sounds grew clearer. She could hear conversations from elsewhere in the court, footsteps in distant hallways, the rush of blood through her own veins. "Oh," she breathed, "this is what you experience all the time?" "A fraction of it," Vasilis confirmed. "But yes, welcome to enhanced perception." She stood, testing her balance, and was startled by how much more coordinated she felt. Stronger, faster, more alive than ever before. "How long does this last?" 2 to 3 weeks, depending on your metabolism. Then you'd need another dose to maintain it, or you'd gradually return to normal. Sera looked at him, this vampire king who had turned her world upside down, and made a decision. "Vasilis, I need to tell you something." "I'm listening." "I think I'm falling in love with you." The words came out in a rush. "I know it's fast, I know it seems crazy, but every day I'm with you I'm more certain. You're patient and kind, you're strong but not cruel, and you make me feel like I matter in a way no one ever has before." His expression transformed, joy and wonder replacing the worry that had been there since the attack. "Sera, I know I'm falling in love with you. I look at you and I see my future, not centuries of lonely existence, but something bright and precious and worth protecting with every bit of power I possess." He pulled her close. "I was afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon, or that I'd overwhelm you." "You can't overwhelm me anymore," Sera said with a slight smile. "I've already accepted vampires are real, that I have a psychic bond with their king, and I just drank your blood. I think we're past the point of taking things slow." He laughed, that wonderful sound she'd grown to treasure, and kissed her deeply. With the vampire blood enhancing her senses, the kiss was even more intense, every point of contact electric, his taste filling her completely. When they broke apart, both flushed and breathing hard, Vasilis rested his forehead against hers. "I need to attend to the council, deal with the political fallout from tonight's attack. But after, may I come back to you? May we talk more about this future we're both starting to see?" "I'll be here," Sera promised. She spent the next few hours exploring her enhanced abilities, testing her new strength and speed with Lilith's amused supervision. She could move faster than any human, could lift furniture she would have struggled with before, could hear and see with remarkable clarity. It was intoxicating and a little frightening. "You're handling this remarkably well," Lilith observed. "Most humans panic when they first experience enhanced senses." "I've had a crash course in adapting to impossible things," Sera said wryly. "At this point, I'm just rolling with it." Vasilis returned near dawn, looking exhausted in a way she'd never seen. She immediately went to him, and he wrapped his arms around her with clear relief. "The council is handling the investigation into how the attackers knew where to find you. We've identified 3 possible leaks in our security, and we're addressing them." He sighed. "But the larger problem remains. The Eastern faction is growing bolder, and this attack was just the opening move." "What do they want?" "Power, primarily. They want to return to the old ways, when vampires ruled openly and humans were little more than cattle. They see my approach coexistence, respect for human life as weakness." His arms tightened around her. "And they see you as the ultimate symbol of that weakness." "Then we show them they're wrong," Sera said firmly. "We show them that loving you doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger, because you have something worth fighting for." Vasilis pulled back to look at her, his ice-blue eyes intense. "You would stand with me in this, even knowing it will put you in danger?" "I already drank your blood and accepted the consequences. I'm not backing down now." She cupped his face, feeling the coolness of his skin. "Besides, I'm not helpless anymore. You've given me the tools to fight. Teach me how to use them." Over the next 2 weeks, Vasilis did exactly that. He trained her personally in combat, teaching her how to use her enhanced speed and strength effectively. Elian joined the sessions, initially skeptical but gradually impressed by Sera's dedication and quick learning. "She has warrior spirit," Elian admitted after watching Sera successfully disarm him in practice. "I didn't expect that from a librarian." "Never underestimate the quiet ones," Sera replied with a grin. "But training wasn't all they did. Vasilis also took her deeper into his world, showing her the complexities of vampire politics, introducing her to allied courts via video calls, and making it clear to everyone that Sera Nolan was not a temporary dalliance, but someone who would be part of his life permanently. The vampire community's response was mixed. Some were genuinely happy for their king, pleased to see him finally find connection after centuries alone. Others were suspicious or disapproving, seeing a human in such a position of influence as dangerous precedent. And the Eastern faction continued to make noise, though they didn't attempt another direct attack. Instead, they worked to undermine Vasilis politically, spreading rumors that he was no longer fit to rule, that his attachment to a human had clouded his judgment. It came to a head 5 weeks after the initial attack. A formal challenge was issued. Demetrios, the king of the Eastern territories, demanded a conclave of all vampire rulers to address Vasilis' abandonment of vampire principles. "It's a power play," Vasilis explained to Sera as they prepared for the conclave. "He wants to force me to choose between you and my throne. In front of all the other kings and queens, he'll demand I prove my commitment to our kind by renouncing my connection to you. And if you refuse, then it could mean civil war. The vampire nation hasn't been truly divided in over a century. It would be catastrophic." Sera took his hand. "Tell me what you need from me. I need you to be there. I need you to stand beside me and show them that you're not some weak human pet, but a partner worthy of respect." He searched her eyes. "But I also need you to know that if it comes to choosing between you and the throne, I choose you. Every time, without hesitation. Vasilis. I mean it. I've been king for 200 years. I've done my duty, maintained peace, ruled justly. But I've been empty the entire time, just going through the motions of existence. You've given me purpose beyond duty. You've given me joy. If they demand I give that up, I'll walk away from the crown without regret." Sera's eyes filled with tears. "You can't mean that. You're a good king. Your people need you. And I need you." He kissed her forehead. "But hopefully it won't come to that choice. Hopefully we can make them understand that what we have doesn't weaken me, it strengthens me." The conclave was held in neutral territory, a vast underground complex beneath New York City that had served as a meeting place for vampire rulers for centuries. Sera had never seen so many vampires in one place. Dozens of them, all radiating power and ancient confidence, their pale skin and otherworldly beauty making the chamber look like a gathering of fallen angels. Vasilis entered with Sera at his side, making a clear statement. She wore a deep blue gown he'd given her, elegant and dignified, her enhanced bearing helping her move with confidence despite the sea of predatory gazes fixed on them. Demetrios sat at the opposite end of the great circular table. He was as beautiful as all vampires, with golden hair and amber eyes, but there was a cruelty to his features that Vasilis lacked. "So, this is the human who has caused such disruption," Demetrios said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "She's lovely, I suppose, in a fragile sort of way. I understand the appeal for a dalliance, Vasilis, but to bring her here? To elevate her to a position of such prominence? Sera Nolan is my blood resonance," Vasilis said calmly, "which you know perfectly well, Demetrios. She's not a dalliance, she's my destined partner." "Blood resonance," Demetrios scoffed. "A myth used to justify weakness. You've allowed yourself to become attached to a creature that will die in the blink of an eye while you continue for millennia. It's pathetic." Sera felt Vasilis tense beside her, but she spoke before he could. "With respect, King Demetrios, you're wrong." The chamber went silent. A human didn't contradict a vampire king, but Sera continued, her voice steady. "Blood resonance isn't a myth. I've experienced it firsthand, and I've researched your histories extensively. It's mentioned in texts dating back thousands of years, and it's recognized in your blood laws as a sacred connection. To dismiss it as weakness is to dismiss your own traditions." Demetrios's eyes narrowed. "You dare lecture me on our traditions, human?" "I dare speak truth," Sera replied, "and the truth is that Vasilis hasn't abandoned vampire principles by accepting our connection. If anything, he's honoring one of your oldest and most sacred laws, the recognition of blood resonance as binding and precious." Murmurs ran through the assembled vampires. Several of the other kings and queens looked thoughtful, clearly recognizing the validity of her argument. "She makes a fair point," said Katerina, the queen of the southern territories, a vampire with silver hair and shrewd eyes. "Blood resonance is enshrined in our laws. To demand Vasilis renounce it would violate those very laws." "The law speaks of blood resonance between vampires," Demetrios countered, "not this corruption." "The law makes no such distinction," Vasilis said quietly, and Sera could hear the steel beneath his calm tone. "It speaks of souls that recognize each other across the boundaries of existence. It doesn't specify both must be vampire." "Then turn her," Demetrios challenged. "If she's so devoted, if this connection is so real, make her one of us, unless she's too afraid to commit fully." Sera met his gaze steadily. "I'm not afraid. Vasilis and I have discussed the possibility of my turning extensively. But we've also decided that such a choice should be made freely, in our own time. Not because someone challenged us to prove something." She paused. "The question isn't whether I'm brave enough to become a vampire. The question is whether you're wise enough to recognize that change isn't weakness." "Change?" Demetrios stood, his power radiating outward in a wave that made several lesser vampires flinch. "What you call change, I call decay. We are predators, not philosophers. We are meant to rule, not coexist." "We are meant to survive," Vasilis said, rising to face him. "And survival requires adaptation. The world has changed, Demetrios. Humans have technology now, weapons that could destroy us if they knew we existed. The old ways of ruling through fear and slaughter would bring about our extinction. My approach has kept our kind safe and thriving for 200 years. Your approach has made us weak. Then challenge me." Vasilis's voice was cold, final. "If you truly believe I'm unfit to rule, challenge me to sanctioned combat. Winner takes my territory and my crown, unless you prefer to continue hiding behind political maneuvering." The chamber erupted in whispers. A direct challenge was serious business, a fight to the death between kings. Demetrios smiled slowly. "You would risk everything on single combat, even with your human watching? What if I win and decide she'd make a lovely prize?" Vasilis moved so fast Sera barely saw it, his hand around Demetrios's throat, lifting the other king off his feet. "If you win, you may take my territory and my crown. But Sera is not part of the wager. She's not a prize or a possession. Touch her and I'll destroy you regardless of the outcome." He released Demetrios, who stumbled back, shock and anger warring on his face. No one had dared handle him that roughly in centuries. "Tomorrow night," Demetrios rasped. "We settle this tomorrow night. Traditional rules, combat until one of us is destroyed or yields." "Agreed," Vasilis said. As they left the chamber, Sera grabbed Vasilis's arm. "Are you insane? He's ancient, he's powerful." "And I'm more powerful," Vasilis said calmly. "I didn't want it to come to this, but he's been pushing for war for years. Better to settle it between us than risk the lives of our people in open conflict." Back in their quarters, luxurious rooms provided for visiting dignitaries, Sera paced while Vasilis watched with patient understanding. "Talk to me," he said. "Tell me what you're feeling." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I know you're strong. I've seen what you can do, but the thought of losing you—" Her voice broke. He was beside her instantly, pulling her into his arms. "You won't lose me. I've been fighting for 3 centuries, Sera. I know Demetrios' style, his weaknesses. I can win this." "But what if you can't? What if something goes wrong? Then you'll grieve and you'll heal, and you'll live the beautiful life you deserve." He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "But I don't intend to lose. I have far too much to live for now." They made love that night for the first time, a desperate and tender claiming that left them both shaken. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with her enhanced senses attuned to every point where their skin met, Sera made a decision. "If you win tomorrow," she said softly, "I want you to turn me. Fully. Permanently. I want to be with you for eternity." Vasilis went very still. "Sera, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I've had weeks to think about this, to understand what it means, and I've realized that whatever life I could have without you would be hollow. You're it for me, Vasilis. You're my person, my home, my future. I don't want a human lifespan anymore. I want centuries beside you." He kissed her deeply, and she tasted salt and realized he was crying actual tears, something vampires supposedly couldn't do. "If I win tomorrow, I will turn you, and I will spend eternity trying to be worthy of the gift you're giving me." "You already are," she whispered. The next night, the arena beneath the conclave hall was packed with vampires from all territories, come to witness their kings settle their dispute in the oldest way their kind knew. Sera stood in the front row, flanked by Lilith and Elian, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood. Vasilis entered from one side, wearing simple black clothes that would allow for movement. His white hair was tied back, his expression calm and focused. Demetrios entered from the other side, dressed similarly, his amber eyes burning with anticipation. The rules were simple. Fight until one was destroyed or yielded. No weapons, no outside interference, just raw vampire power and combat skill accumulated over centuries. They circled each other, and then the fight began. It was brutal and beautiful, two ancient predators moving with impossible speed and grace. They clashed with impacts that cracked the stone floor, trading blows that would have killed any human instantly. Blood flowed black in the arena lights, and both kings bore wounds that healed almost as fast as they were inflicted. Demetrios was strong, vicious, fighting with the cruelty that had defined his long reign. But Vasilis was faster, more controlled, and he fought with something Demetrios lacked, purpose beyond pride. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 20 minutes. Both vampires were flagging, their enhanced healing slower now as they depleted their reserves. Demetrios went for a killing blow. His hand aimed for Vasilis' heart, but Vasilis sidestepped at the last second and countered with devastating precision. His hand plunged into Demetrios' chest, seizing the ancient heart. The golden-haired king froze, shock written across his face. "Yield," Vasilis commanded, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "Never," Demetrios snarled. "Then I'm sorry." And with a sharp twist, Vasilis destroyed the heart, reducing it to ash. Demetrios crumbled, his body rapidly decaying as the centuries caught up with him all at once. Within seconds, there was nothing left but dust, and the memory of a king who had let pride destroy him. Vasilis stood over the remains, breathing hard, covered in blood and wounds. His eyes found Sera in the crowd, and the relief and love in his gaze made her heart break and mend simultaneously. The vampires in the arena began to chant, a traditional acknowledgement of victory. "Long live King Vasilis! Long live the king of the Midwest!" But Vasilis ignored them, walking directly to Sera and pulling her into his arms despite the blood and gore covering him. "It's done," he said against her hair. "It's over. We're safe." "I love you," Sera said, not caring who heard. "I love you so much." "And I love you," he replied, "my queen, my heart, my eternity." The turning happened 3 nights later, after the conclave had concluded and they had returned to Chicago. Vasilis had explained the process carefully. She would drink his blood while he drained hers, then her heart would stop and her body would die. 3 days later, she would wake as a vampire. "It will be the most painful thing you've ever experienced," he warned. "The death is agonizing, and the 3 days between death and resurrection are filled with transformation that you'll be unconscious for, but your body will feel. I can give you my blood to make you stronger before we begin, but I can't take away the pain entirely." "I understand," Sera said. She'd read the accounts, knew what to expect. "I'm ready." They performed the turning in his private chambers, with only Lilith and Elian present as witnesses. Vasilis made it as gentle as he could, holding her close as his fangs pierced her throat, drinking her blood while feeding her his own from a cut on his wrist. The pain was indeed excruciating, but through it all, she felt his love through their bond, his encouragement, his promise that she would wake to eternity with him. Her last conscious thought before the darkness took her was, "I'm coming home." 3 days later, Sera Nolan opened her eyes to a world transformed. Colors were impossibly vivid, sounds were crystalline clear, and she could smell everything. The candles burning across the room, Vasilis' scent beside her, blood pumping through veins in distant parts of the complex. And she was hungry, ravenously, painfully hungry in a way she'd never experienced. Easy. Vasilis said, his voice a comfort even as her new predator instinct screamed at her. I have blood for you, fresh from the blood bank, ethically sourced. Drink, my love. He handed her a crystal glass filled with blood, and she drank greedily, the hunger abating as the blood filled her system. It tasted like life itself, rich and warm and perfect. When she finished, she looked at Vasilis. Really looked at him with her new vampire sight and nearly gasped. He'd always been beautiful, but now she could see the power radiating from him, could sense the centuries of existence that made him who he was. How do you feel? He asked gently. Sera considered. Her body felt strong, capable, alive in a way it never had when she was human. But she still felt like herself, still had her memories, her personality, her love for this vampire king. I feel perfect, she said. I feel like I've finally become who I was always meant to be. His smile was radiant. Welcome to eternity, my love. The next weeks were an adjustment. Sera had to learn to control her new strength, to manage the bloodlust, to navigate vampire politics from a new position of power as Vasilis' partner and queen. It was challenging and sometimes overwhelming, but she had help. Vasilis was patient and thorough. Lilith became a trusted friend and advisor, and even Elian warmed to her fully once he saw her dedication to learning their ways. She kept her job at the library, though she adjusted her hours to accommodate her new nature. It turned out that research skills were just as valuable as an immortal as they had been as a human, and Vasilis frequently consulted her on historical matters and legal precedents. They established new protocols for the court, making it clear that humans who formed connections with vampires would be treated with respect and given genuine choice about whether to be turned. Several other blood resonance pairs emerged in the following months, emboldened by Sera and Vasilis' example. The Eastern Territories, leaderless after Demetrios' death, underwent a period of upheaval before Katerina from the Southern Territories took control, ruling both regions with a wisdom that reminded everyone why she'd survived so many centuries. She and Vasilis formed a strong alliance, working together to modernize vampire society while respecting its traditions. 6 months after her turning, Sera stood beside Vasilis at a formal court gathering, wearing a gown of midnight blue and a circlet that marked her as queen. She looked out at the assembled vampires, her people now, and felt a bone-deep satisfaction. This was her life. This impossible, beautiful, eternal life. Vasilis took her hand, their connection humming with love and contentment. Happy? He murmured. Incredibly, she replied, though I never imagined my life would turn out like this when I whispered your name in my sleep. He laughed, that wonderful sound she would get to hear for centuries, and I never imagined that a single whispered name could change everything. But I'm grateful every day that you called to me, that you gave us a chance. I'd do it again, Sera said. Every time, in every lifetime, I'd choose you. As I would choose you. He raised their joined hands, addressing the court. My queen, my love, my eternity. The assembled vampires raised their glasses in salute, and Sera felt the weight of her new role settle comfortably on her shoulders. She was no longer Sera Nolan, lonely librarian from Boston. She was Sera Dracos, vampire queen of the Midwest, partner to an ancient king, and she had forever to explore everything that meant. But more than titles or power, she had love. Real, deep, transformative love that had started with a name whispered in darkness and grown into something that would outlast centuries. She looked at Vasilis, her husband in all but the most formal sense. They were planning a wedding for next month, a blend of vampire and human traditions, and knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Some people never found their person, the one who made the world make sense. Sera had found hers, and he'd turned out to be a 300-year-old vampire king who heard her call from 100 miles away and came running. It was impossible and perfect and exactly what she needed. Later that night, after the formalities had ended and they'd retreated to their private quarters, Vasilis pulled her into his arms and kissed her with the passion of someone who knew they had eternity, but still treasured every moment. I love you, he said against her lips, today, tomorrow, for all the centuries to come. I love you too, Sera replied, my king, my heart, my home. Outside their windows, the impossible gardens bloomed under starlight, roses in colors that didn't exist in the mortal world, spreading their scent through the air. The court of eternal night thrummed with life and activity, vampires going about their nightly business, secure in the knowledge that their king was happy and their territory was strong. And in the private chambers at the heart of it all, two people who had found each other across impossible distances held each other close and dreamed of the future they would build together. Sera had whispered a name in her sleep, and a vampire king had heard it and come to her. That moment had changed both their lives, transforming loneliness into love, isolation into connection, and finite existence into infinite possibility. It was a story that would be told in vampire courts for generations to come. The tale of King Vasilis and Queen Sera, whose love proved that the old magic still existed, that blood resonance was real, and that sometimes the most impossible connections were the ones that mattered most. They had forever now, and they intended to make every moment of it count. Together, they would rule with wisdom and compassion, would protect their people and each other, and would prove that love, real, deep, transformative love, could survive anything, even death itself. The night stretched before them, full of promise and peace, and for the first time in 300 years, Vasilis felt complete. For the first time in her life, Sera felt like she belonged. They had found each other in the darkness, and together they had created something bright enough to last for eternity. And as dawn approached and they settled into bed together, Sera's head on Vasilis' chest and his arms wrapped protectively around her, both of them smiled. This was home. This was love. This was forever. The end of loneliness and the beginning of everything else.